You know, everything is starting to feel the same. Never mind! Ladies, gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, Elden Ring patch 1.07 is here, and oh boy, is it a doozy! This isn't just some tiny couple of changes type of patch, it's a whole balancing readjustment across the board. Weapons, ashes of war, spells, and even just the concept of how PvP works has been shifted quite noticeably. And in this video, we're going to focus on the changes to spells within the game, meaning specifically the sorceries and the incantations. There were a bunch of tiny changes made and a few relatively major ones as well. So we're going to start by going over the big important changes that can actually shift the feeling of an entire playthrough if you want them, and then just machine gun through all the tinier things that have been done at the end. First off then, let's talk about some sorceries. We have just the basic glintstone pebble. This will be your best friend in the early days of a sorcerer's existence, and, well, this simply got an attack buff. Nothing overly notable, it's not massive, but given how universally used this sorcery is, it felt important to make a note of. The biggest sorcery change that there was, though, was to Gelmir's Fury. It got a reduced FP cost, increased cast speed, and shortened recovery, but the big deal is they changed the way that the projectiles work to make it better at hitting enemies in front of you, as well as greatly increasing the overall damage, the initial damage, and also the ability for the spell to stagger your enemies. This has gone from a pretty good sorcery to a pretty much god tier sorcery overnight, entirely thanks to this patch. If you like fire and you like magic, then this thing is going to be one of your new best friends. It is simply Cuckoo Bananas. This is a spell being used against the troll outside the Godric fight in patch 1.03. It takes about 6 seconds to kill it. It took a full charge cast of the spell, and then the residual effects on the ground killed it afterwards a couple of seconds later. Here is the exact same enemy with pretty much the same player buffs in 1.07. 3 seconds flat, doesn't even take the full burst. Against fire weak enemies like a snow troll, this thing can hit for 8,700 in a full burst, and it even takes down Godfrey like he's a slice of butter on warm toast. It's just ridiculously good now. Seriously. The next major change then comes to the Oracular Bubbles and Great Oracular Bubbles sorceries. And these were always good sorceries, not necessarily top tier, but they were good damage for the FP cost, good range, and they were a nice bit of utility magic to have around as well. But the main downside that they had was that they rooted you on the spot while you were casting them. Well, the big change here is that both of these spells can now be cast while moving, making them significantly stronger for obvious reasons all in itself. On top of that, they've gained some increase in attack power as well, and they are better at tracking targets now, so you're more likely to hit when you use them against things that are moving. Honestly, the other changes are just a nice little cherry on top. The big deal here is absolutely the fact that you can cast them while moving. It's just a game changer. Then we have Stars of Ruin. This spell has had a bit of a dip in popularity recently as its tracking was made worse in PvP to make it less annoying, but it is worth noting that it was changed in this update a little bit with reduced FP and stamina cost, while also gaining a little bit of a bump in damage when it is charged specifically. And then this one applies to both sorceries and incantations, so it's a nice midpoint to tie them all together. A number of frost and blood-based sorceries and poison-based incantations have simply had their build-up rate increased, specifically being Glintstone Ice Crag, Freezing Mist, Frozen Armament, some more Ice Storm, Adula's Moonblade, Sword Hit itself, and the explosion of Explosive Ghost Flame, the Briars of Sin and Briars of Punishment blood spells as well, the Poison Mist and Poison Armament incantations, and then also the Frozen Lightning Spear incantation has had its build-up improved as well. All of them now deal a little bit more status damage, and so they are better for their individual purposes. Moving on then to the incantation specific side of things then, the first thing that we have to talk about is a nerf to a pretty commonly used spell. Both Rotten Breath and Exike's Decay, the dragon incantations, have gotten reduced rot buildup in general, but also reduced straight up damage against players in PvP scenarios. Here is it being used against the Grafted Scion in New Game Plus in patch 1.02. It takes 4 hits from the breath to apply rot, and now in 1.07 it takes 6 or 7 hits to apply it, so just slightly more, not a massive difference, but a notable one for a spell that's main use is to apply Scarlet Rot to your enemies, really. As for things that are a bit nicer to see, more on the buff side of things, Scarlet Ionia has been changed quite a decent amount, which is a nice contrast to the way that the other Scarlet Rot applying incantations were changed. It now has reduced FP cost, increased attack power, poise damage, and stamina stamina damage against guarding foes, as well as the range has been increased on the landing itself, and the recovery time decreased, and its bonus poise has also been repositioned, so it happens right at the start of the animation, as it should, as this actually lets you get it off properly. Overall, this is a pretty sizable change for a very cool incantation. It has gone from pretty much unusable in most situations to actually decent, and considering it is just so cool as a visual, that is worth talking about here for sure. As well, Bestial Sling has been changed. Now there is a tighter spread on the rocks, less randomness, and more guaranteed hits if you're right up in an enemy's face. It does more stamina damage against enemies that are blocking, but decreased poise damage as a whole. We also have the Black Blade Incantation getting some pretty noticeable changes, with more of a turning arc while launching, letting you adjust your aim a little bit more. Reduced stamina consumption as well, but it has reduced damage, stamina damage, and poise damage on the hits themselves, as well as less of an ability to multi-hit the larger enemies like it used to. However, the main use of this attack was the health percentage draining debuff, and that part still works like it did beforehand, so this isn't so bad when you consider the increased ease of use now as well. And they actually did a little hidden buff to this too that isn't mentioned explicitly in the patch notes, which is that the max health reduction effect of the Black Blade effect now lasts for 60 seconds after application. Before this patch, it was only 15 seconds, so that is an absolutely ridiculous increase in duration for this effect. And then we have a couple more dragon spells getting a positive change. Both Dragon Claw and Dragon Maw have been buffed. Both of them have reduced FP cost, increased damage to stamina against guarding enemies, and are better at hitting enemies in their own way. Specifically, Dragon Claw now has better directional control while you're attacking with it, so you can adjust to a moving foe, and Dragon Maw has had its hitbox changed to make it easier to hit close range enemies. Then a couple more beast incantations really quick. The Beast Claw incantation has been given a greater range on its cone of damage, and Gerank's Beast Claw has quite a significant change in that the wind up to the attack now has a hitbox as well. It also deals damage, so if you use it right up in the face of an enemy, you get that extra pop of damage as well. It isn't overly strong, but it could be enough to break the poise of an incoming attack to allow you to launch off the spell as a whole. Then finally, for the more important and notable changes, we have Howl of Shibiri. This incantation inflicts madness on all of those around the caster, including the caster themselves, then buffs your damage with all types by 25%, while also making you take 30% more damage in general. Before the patch, this effect lasted for 20 seconds, but this has had a massive duration increase and now lasts double that at 40 seconds of active time on the buff/debuff itself. Past that, we have a ton of tiny little changes as well. I'll scroll through them on the screen if you want to pause for anything in particular, but for the most part, there were just a lot of smaller attack power buffs going around. Almost everything that even has a slot on the patch notes has had lowered FP consumption now, which is great. A large amount of them now do more stamina damage against guarding enemies, which is more useful in PvP than anything else, and then there have been some slight cast time changes and recovery time changes as well. A few of the charge spells have had specifically their charge damage increased, and that's about it. Of course, this is very early times in this patch notes release, and so it may turn out that there are more notable things that weren't mentioned in the notes themselves over the coming days, so keep an eye out as we find new and hopefully exciting things, but this is the initial roundup of all the absolutely massive list of changes to spells across the board. Magic has been buffed, incantations have been buffed, to put it simply. They've just been straight up buffed. If you like magic, this is a time to be happy. That's it for now, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this bit of a deeper dive into the spell side of patch 1.07. There's just been so many changes. It's sort of unbelievable that a patch of this size has happened this deep into the release of the game, and it definitely makes me excited for the future. I mean, if they're making this many changes 7.5 months after the game came out, then they still have very big plans for the future. And hey, for any PvP enjoyers out there, they are clearly considering your feelings with how things are evolving as well. Good luck bumbling around in the patch, Tarnished. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.